Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and thank you for stopping by once again. This video is more or less a companion piece to the newsletter I just sent out. If you're on the mailing list for that at retirementwave.com, then you should have it, or it should certainly be on its way by now. In fact, it's probably been there for a while because it takes a little longer for these to get put up and ready. If you don't know what I'm talking about in terms of the newsletter, look at the description below this video and I'll give you instructions. It's no big deal. There's no advertising. There's no pressure. These newsletters come out very rarely, only 3 or 4 times in the course of a year. And I waited on this one and put it off because I wanted as much information as I could. We're at that transition point where we're going from one status basically to a new one that is opening up. And this country's taken, and for some months now, a very methodical approach to everything, and step by step by step, and it's been doing it, and it's working. Our COVID statistics are outstanding, as simple as that. We came down like a ton of brick on it, and we've worked very hard. We're very pleased with that, but God help us, we will be able to continue that as we open up. We'll see. It's never a sure thing in this world. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the details of how the market operates here that don't come out in a report like the one I just sent out today. And since many of you are headed down here to take a look for renting or buying a property, I wanted to get at least some of this out, and I will today. I'm just going to go push through several of them as quickly as I can, but there's stuff you need to understand certain things. I think it will be helpful. And one of those is that the urban market, the metropolitan area, which represents over half the population of the country and more than half of its housing stock that interests expatriates, that level, this is as globalized an area as you can get between the canal and our international airport, international shipping facilities, our world's second largest free trade zone, blah, 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 and on and on and on and on, and all sorts of interconnections now infrastructure being built through the canal and so forth. This is really a globalized city, and we have people from all over here, and they own properties, and they rent them, if you're into that, and they sell them, just as Panamanians do. So you really don't know what nationality you're going to be talking to when you go into a property to actually meet somebody. And they could be Venezuelan very easily, they could be Colombian, they could be German, they could be Japanese. We have all sorts of people, and of course Americans, Canadians, but they're really a minority group. We're all minorities here in this town, let me tell you. Although Panamanians obviously outnumber the rest of us. But if the next largest groups would be Colombians and Venezuelans, for example. And they leave everybody else pretty much further behind. But other Latin Americans we have from all over, and they're coming in due to the difficulties in other countries in the region and the fact that we've done well and we've been particularly stable. We have a lot of people coming in here seeking safe haven from all sorts of places. It's not just Venezuela, and for all sorts of reasons. So they're also having challenges too. So we all work together, so to speak, to make this market work. It doesn't mean that the prices are going through the ceiling. You have to keep in mind a lot of people are coming in with some of them not that much money immediately available to them, and so on. Other Latin Americans, for example, I mean, it's all fine and dandy. They don't like what's happening. There's some really serious problems at home. It doesn't mean you can sell your business and get any money for it. It doesn't mean you can sell your house, and you've got to have something if you're going to be moving people here. It gets complicated, so you don't make any assumptions here. You just roll with it however it goes. Now, stat junkies is what I call most of us. So many of us have gotten so used to having statistics thrown at us. And here, we know that. So people who are selling or rent real estate or renting it, they'll just throw out all sorts of statistics. Now, some of them make real efforts to come up with some recognizable numbers that are related to some of the reality there. Others, I don't know where they get their numbers, but I mean, I admire the people who put the effort into it, but it's impossible to know. This is such a splintered market that we don't have multiple listing service, for example. You'd be surprised how many Americans and Canadians just assume that we do. We don't. We have an MLS. I should say we do have one, but it's just getting rolling. It's just getting started. It's not yet ready for prime time. And it doesn't have enough listings. So really, basically, it boils down to is most of the properties, especially obviously those you want to rent, and most of those you want to buy that have been here for a while, that are actually functioning, are available, they will be owned or rented by somebody, an individual, as opposed to a corporate. That's the exception to this being those condo towers, which are just opening up, and they are actually doing the sales themselves. You're likely, however, and you're down here, to be talking to individual owners. And that goes very much for renting. And one of the reasons here, and this is a surprise, it was a surprise to me. I had expected something else. And that is, we don't have any apartment houses here. Now, when I said that to a couple, they were both had gone to university in Florida. They met there. They got married, but they know the U.S. quite well, and so on. And I said that very thing. You don't have any apartment houses here. They immediately had a reaction, say, of course, we have lots of them. They're all over the place. And I said, no. Those are condo towers, and those are condominiums, and they're owned by people, and those people have them up for sale. But they have them up for rental. But there is no apartment house as we're used to in North America. And I said, you were in Florida. You went to school in Florida. Where did you live while you went to university? And they said, an apartment. I said, did you rent it? And they said, yes. I said, was it in a building full of other apartments, all of which were for rent and were administered by a rental, by an overall management? And they said, yeah. Oh, yeah. I said, well, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, that's what you're talking about. Yeah, I said, that's an apartment house as far as I, as an American, think of an apartment house. And we don't have any here, really, the truth. We have some hotels that have sort of like apart hotels, they call them. There's a little bit of that, but they're not even remotely an apartment, that kind of apartment house. So if you're renting from an individual. Some will be people who do this regularly. They may own a dozen places here they're renting them out, but most of them are going to be individuals. Sorry about that. I just realized I had to do something. It's done. Let's go through what may occur when you are here and you've spoken to an agent and you've said something along the lines of, I'm looking for a place between $175,000 and $200,000, for example, or a rental between $1,200 and $1,600. I'm just throwing numbers out, all right? You could be double that, or not half that, but double it, yes. I'm going to say she, it could be he just as easily, but she will need to go out and look for these properties that you describe. You would probably talk about, no, this neighborhood or that neighborhood has caught your eye, you've heard a lot about it, blah, 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 and so on and so forth, and you want it to be in a high rise, or you don't, or whatever, all the little ins and outs of what it is you want. Now, she goes through it. Remember, we don't have a multiple listing service that covers thousands of properties here, so she cannot go through that. She has to, through her own contacts, their own listings, and others that she's familiar with, and looking for it, and that's what she's going to do. And she'll find places for you. Now, let's say you were the 175 to 200,000 person, okay? I've seen this happen. And she says to you, well, let's go take a look at this place. And the potential buyer says, no, I don't want to go there. And that's listed at 250,000. I'm looking for 175 to 200,000. I got quite perturbed by the whole thing. Well, okay, the prices are unrealistic out there. All right? People say, are these? No one has any real knowledge as to what the standard prices are, except what they know from conversations and talking, a few things they see here and there, perhaps in the papers. It's a matter of discussion. They're probably not way off, but some will be, especially now when we're opening it up again and people are really looking for the right price. The prices you often see up on the internet, for example, were set back before the pandemic, and the property's been up there for a while, and have never been adjusted or new ones being put up. I've seen too much of this putting it up at the older level without any indication of a cutback in the hopes that you don't know that this is a buyer's market. Well, just put all that aside. The point is that she's very likely offering, suggesting you see a $250K place, because that's where you get a 20% discount. You end up with a $200,000 home, and you get the max for that $200K, for example, or a little bit more. Maybe you get it down to 190 or something of this sort. You don't know until you go in and take a look and you offer. If you're interested, don't, for God's sakes, offer unless you're really willing to purchase it. You might be shocked, and that isn't going to go over well with anybody if you say, I insist on this, and they say, okay, be prepared to come through, okay? Anyhow, the point being that you need to you need to understand that if your agent doesn't understand that, then she's not going to suggest that you ask for offer a lower price or whatever. She has to be a little crazy. Basically, what she'll mean to do is to go in there, and if you like this place, you offer them what you're willing to pay or whatever you want to offer them, and see what happens, because you're new and you're just getting started. Now, she may not do that. She may think, nope, we're just going to go in and take a look, and we're going to get an understanding of what is out there, and you can see at a level similar to what you're looking for, what is available now, and so forth, and work from that perspective. Anything can happen. Let her have her head, so to speak. Let her show you. Don't tell her how to do her job yet. If you really don't like your agent, then by all means get another agent. There are a lot of them out here, but the truth is as I've worked with them, and it was one agent I really didn't much care for at one point, but she did her job. I've worked with several, and that's all I really cared about. And she did her job, and she did it on my behalf, and it worked out well. Okay, so I would just let them move ahead and see what they have to show me, and now say, okay, no, this isn't it, this isn't it. So if she's good, or if he's good, I don't want to get this, one gender here, it could be either one. If they're good, they're going to understand more and more and more what it is you really want and what you're really interested in paying it for, and how you're responding and reacting. They read your body language and everything else, and they'll begin to focus on something that is really fits your situation. If that doesn't happen, then you move on to somebody else. But in the beginning, sort of relax and let them show you what they think might work out best for you after having been told what it is you want and what your budget is, and expecting them to maintain it. And you can say, I understand it's a buyer's market, and I want to make every attempt I can to get the lowest possible price, and so forth. Yes, indeed, it reduces her commission, but she knows that. If they're good, they just go ahead and they move with it. And they, the point is they don't want to waste their time. So why should they waste yours? A decent agent realizes that, and he may take you to 3 or 4 different places to get a sense, and some maybe 1 or 2 of them may be completely wrong for you, and so on. That's useful. I mean, he can't do that all week. You don't want to do that all the time. Most people, when it comes to a rental, most people make up their minds in a relatively short period of time. They see a few of them, and they know basically how much they want to spend, and they get a sense. Rentals are a little bit more predictable, that a particular area will have a particular range. It's buying, it's purchases. That's where you're all over the map. And it's very hard to know. So working with the agent is very important aspect. Now, what happens when the agent wants to, or you, a property you want to look at? You just don't walk into the property. She will go back. She'll pick up the phone. She'll call whatever the number is associated with the property. It will probably be another agent. She will try to set up an appointment for the agent and typically the owner to show up and meet you, and all of you get together and take a look at that apartment. This is time consuming. This is, in the metro area though, it has to be done this way because otherwise everyone's got to be be at the same place at the same time, and people are busy, people are working, the traffic can be awful and so on. So you've got to do that. You can't say, just get it together around 2 or so. You really are aiming at an appointed time. If you're a little late, that's not going to set the world on fire, but it has to be done. And it's very common for owners. I like owners to show up. I really don't want to rent without seeing the owner. Frequently, owners don't want to rent to you without seeing you. It works both ways. I'm looking for somebody I feel comfortable with, I talk to, and I think, yeah, I think this is probably someone I can get along well with, and they're going through the same process. So don't be surprised if it takes a little time to get it organized. And sometimes, depending on the time of year here, what the circumstances are, it may be hard to get to the owner of one particular property. During holidays, for example, that the owner may be Spanish and in Madrid. So, I mean, you've got these sorts of considerations too. So that's what she's doing, or he's doing for you, is trying to find those that are alive and real and available, and people will get together and talk to you, and a deal can be made if you find something you really like, and they feel the same in return. So I like to talk about that because it's not exactly how it operates in some countries. It's very much like it operates in a number of other countries. I know that. Some of you are sitting out there saying, so what's the big deal? But others say, what? You mean, really? Well, that's the way it is. So I wanted to mention that. Let me see. I've went through most of the things. Well, one of the biggest challenges we have going here, and I mentioned it in the report, and I said I would say something on this video, so I'm going to say something, all right? And that is regarding this sudden arrival of a whole new approach in real estate. And it's gotten very, well, it's moving. It's moving properties. Right now, it's moving properties. It has been for a while now, unlike most of them who are sitting here waiting patiently. And this is, as I described in the written report, it's a European business, a European who is in charge of that business and has the funds to finance his own construction. There are buildings that he has a couple up that I know are functioning. He's got others that are definitely under construction and moving right along and opening up. This year, next year, and even in 2024. I mean, he is on the move. He's got a lot of different properties here, and he is doing extremely well. But the properties are very, very small. Now, some are, in one case, 23 square meters, which is about 250 square feet. I mean, basically, it's a hotel room, all right? But it has a space for a small refrigerator and a little oven of some sort. I mean, I look at it and go, yeah. But the others are not quite so small, but they may be 40, 50 square meters. Multiply by 10 and add a little on. That gives you an idea of how many square feet, if you think in terms of square feet. These are very small places. And they are one bedroom with one bath or two baths. And that's the only ones I've seen him offer at this stage of the game. And that's very unusual here. I mean, the old traditional ways, you had a separate small room for the maid because so many people had to live in maids. That's not anywhere near what it used to be, and that's disappearing. So those rooms tend to end up being storage spaces or little tiny offices or one thing or another, but that is less common. But to get real estate people here to really do something different is like pulling teeth, I know, because it's separate from everything I do here. I also am trying to get some interest going in something that's outside the box in real estate that I think is fantastic. But it's not easy. And if he was trying to do this without his financing himself, I don't have that. I wish I did. But if he was trying that, I don't think he would have gotten off the ground for a minute. It would have been very difficult for him to do it. But as it is, he can do that. And he can even help finance some of the purchases too. So why are people getting these little tiny places? And the biggest, I think, was something over 100 square meters, 1,000 square feet or whatever. That's pretty sizable, but still, that's including the balcony, which in some of these, the quote, bigger ones, is larger. It includes everything. Now, and you don't get what we call here the linea blanca, the white line. That is from the time when in the old days when you'd have a washer, a dryer, a stove, and a refrigerator also lined up, and that was the white line. And those didn't come with apartments. You had to bring them your own with you. And when I arrived here, a lot of apartments were done that way. And I said, no. When I buy a furnished apartment, I expect all that to be there. And that Americans and Canadians who really got the ball rolling down here in the first decade of this century, they really wanted furnished places, and it got into people's minds you had to do that, and so that's changed very dramatically. Now here, you get your own fridge, you get your own stove, you have to pay for it yourself, your own washer and dryer. Those appliances, those major appliances, are things you are responsible for getting, on top of the fact that you're getting this very small place, and you're paying an extremely high price per square meter for it. But that's understandable because the man is, after all, in a place that might have held 50 apartments is now holding 150 apartments. It's 150 bathrooms instead of 50 bathrooms, and so on. And so there's a lot of stuff he has to put in that's going to be extra. So it's not a surprise. I'm not even saying that they're outrageous. It's just, why do people want such tiny places? A lot of people here have children, a lot of people, and so on and so on and so on. Are they all foreigners who are coming here to work? I mean, that's true. Some, and can they be retirees? Yeah, sure, of course they can. My guess is there's a substantial number that are younger middle-aged Panamanians who have coming up in the ranks. They've traditionally lived at home. There's no shame in that when you're getting started. They're married now. They want to have a place. They're both maybe working. They want it to be in a nice neighborhood. The address is important to them. They're looking for something different than you are. They'll give up a lot of stuff if they can be in the right address and the right location and what have you. That when they talk about, when people ask them at job interviews, well, where do you live, it sounds better. It's the way things go, and at this stage in economic development, and it doesn't surprise me the least bit. And nothing has been really created for these people in the past at all. They will be happy to do that because it's also a second thing, and this also draws in people who are not of that background. They're not necessarily Panamanian, they're not necessarily young at all, and they're doing it as an investment. And what do they expect to do with it? And the very first answer, a lot of them, and we're talking about the biggest group, I think, is Airbnb. And remember, no apartment houses in Panama City. So you have to rent from somebody, an individual as a rule. Now, if you've got one of these buildings and they're set up, I'll give him credit. He's got all the amenities there, the gyms and everything else and all this special stuff. And one of them has a rooftop restaurant and one of them, this is bright. This is really intelligent. Giving them a lot of the extra stuff you only got as a rule at the very ritzy, fancy places here. And they can, having all that, plus some shops and others in the base floor, make it rentable. Now, my condo We don't have any little shops down on the base floor. We don't have a little market where you can go in and buy something food-wise, pretty quick. And we don't have a restaurant in this place. It's just a condominium. You get an apartment and so on. Here, they've created that sense more like a hotel, but where their other services are present. And they have the social area. They have all these things that regular condominiums have, plus they have these extra amenities. These little shops are considered to be definitely amenities, and a good Lord, a rooftop restaurant. This is really simple, and it's I love it because it's a sort of thinking. This man is outside the box here. He comes in and he does this, and people would say, "Oh no, you're never going to get that. And the people who are going to pay you $3,000 a square meter for some little tiny hole in the wall." I mean, and they have to get all their own appliances and everything else. You've got to be joking. No, he's not joking, and he's doing very, very well. Now, as somebody who has for a long time tried to help people get out the box and think differently, because that's our biggest single problem. And in my real estate, they just build the same thing over and over and over again, and they don't recognize the changes in the market that are occurring here locally in their own nation, but also from expats coming in. I mean, they're missing a lot of it. And it's been very tough to deal with this. He's done it. I'm hoping he breaks the ice sufficiently that those of us who have been pushing hard to get this sort of thinking, not just in the city, but outside the city as well, to get them to take advantage of this sort of attitude, not for small places. All I'm talking about is outside the box, something other than the standard run-of-the-mill thing that we currently have in great quantity all over the place. Then if he does that, then it's a huge contribution to the real estate sector as a whole, and I deeply appreciate it. I can tell you I will thank him if that's the case. So I said I'd mention that, but it gives you the thought. These people, this Airbnb thing is like huge. Now, legally here in Panama, you can only rent for 45 days or more. Fine. They'll do that. And, of course, it's not necessarily enforced a great deal, but they will go for 45 days if they can get it, of course. Don't worry about it. They want it, and it's very, very popular, and it works. And for people coming in who want to spend, say, 2 or 3 months here, you don't have many individual owners who want to rent out their apartment for 2 or 3 months. They just don't. They want to rent it for a year, all right? So they have to go around and look for somebody. And where do they go now? Airbnb. A lot of people use it already. So this is a very common thing. Everybody knows it. So that's what I wanted to mention. And there's a few other little comments, too, about how you approach the market, what you think about here. It's a very exciting nation, and I mean the whole of it, because we've got a lot going for us, a lot more than I can put into any report, and it's just too much. And we will see. The tire hits the road now. Can we allow more and more people in? We actually have quite a few more coming in right now, but at what point are we really ready, and will we be able to deal with a variant that comes in if there's a new one along? I mean, you just have to keep this always, and we do, in the back of our heads as there's a problem. Nobody wants to say, we made it, it's over. No. Isn't that nice? It would be lovely to say that, but we cannot yet say that. But we are certainly moving close to it. Our economic growth rate is steaming along. It's over double what the government itself had predicted at the beginning of the year. And it's right up there with what the international agencies are predicting. They saw it. People who look at it without emotion and without politics or anything else interfering with it can understand what's going on here very clearly, and they do, and they're almost unanimous across the board. And what they said at the beginning of the year was going to happen is happening, even though people thought it was way too positive in the beginning. So we're coming back, and that is more than enough for this video. I will be answering questions too about this sort of thing, anything to do with it, as people are heading down. And we'll do my best. I have several of you I'm seeing here over the next couple of weeks. and I look forward to that too. I always enjoy seeing people, and I always enjoy hearing from you, so feel free to write. And I hope you find the written report, long though it is, to be useful and maybe even once in a while enjoyable. Thanks again for stopping by.